From working as a shoe salesman to passing on an opportunity to work with notorious killer Ted Bundy, these are some of the decisions Mark Harmon has made that have impacted his career. Harmon is a much-loved actor who became famous around the world for his portrayal of Leroy Gibbs in the hit series NCIS. But did you know that before Harmon became an actor, the father of two had a very different career? And one day, he suddenly realized that he needed to change his career path. Mark worked as a shoe salesman until he had a chance encounter with a stranger at a bar. According to Harmon, it was this encounter that made him pursue his dream of becoming an actor. As the story goes, while Mark was working as a shoe salesman, he was coming back from Boston after a long day, and he decided to stop by a bar to blow off some steam. He found himself sitting next to a 33-year-old who was talking about struggling to make a nice pension for himself by the time he turned 65. As the young man was pounding back his martinis, it became abundantly clear to Harmon just how miserable this man was, having to work a job that he despised for the sake of securing his retirement. That conversation with a random stranger would prove to be the most important moment of Mark Harmon's life. Afterward, Mark got in his car, drove to his place of employment, and gave his boss 2 weeks' notice. The rest, as they say, is history. Mark went on to star in NCIS for nearly 20 years before leaving the show in 2021 during the show's 19th season. In a special featurette on the show's season 19 DVD, Harmon tells us why he stayed with NCIS for so long. Mark explains that what kept him returning to the hit drama series every season was the show's material, particularly with respect to his character, Leroy Gibbs.
The same thing, right? Like every show we're going to do, everybody thinks it's going to go forever and do well. It doesn't work out that way, normally. Walking down a street in Salzburg, Austria.
As an actor, he loved to tackle the material because it was always fresh and challenging. By the time 2021 rolled around, Harmon felt that his character's storyline had run its course, and clearly the material no longer felt fresh and challenging. If there's one thing we know about great actors, it's that they love to be challenged. If playing the role of Leroy Gibbs had become too easy or even mundane for Harmon, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise to anyone that he decided to walk away. Are you an NCIS fan who's desperately hoping to get a chance to see Harmon's Leroy Gibbs again? Well, if so, you might just be in luck. NCIS showrunner Steve Binder has released a statement saying that Gibbs could possibly make a comeback in future seasons. Binder's statement read, "As an executive producer and dear friend, Mark continues to be an integral part of the fabric of the show. Our North Star has always been staying true to our characters. That truth has always guided the stories we tell and where those characters go. So, regarding the future of Gibbs, as longtime fans of the show may have noticed over the years, never count Leroy Jethro Gibbs out." You won't believe this, but did you know that Mark Harmon almost sat down with the notorious serial killer Theodore Ted Bundy? Yeah, true story. Ultimately, Harmon refused to sit down and meet the man who had confessed to killing at least 30 women between 1974 and 1978. I mean, can you blame Harmon? I wouldn't want to be in the same room with Ted Bundy either. Bundy was executed via electric chair at 7:16 a.m. on Tuesday, January 24, 1989. His last words were directed at his attorney, Jim Coleman, and Methodist minister, Fred Lawrence. Bundy said, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Outside of the prison were hundreds of revelers. They sang, danced, and even set off fireworks. People cheered wildly as the white hearse containing Bundy's corpse left the prison. If things had gone differently, Mark Harmon could have brushed shoulders with Ted Bundy. Before he was thrust into superstardom as Special Agent Leroy Gibbs, Harmon played a variety of interesting and bold characters. He played Agent Simon Donovan in famed screenwriter and director Aaron Sorkin's hit series The West Wing. Harmon's role as Agent Simon Donovan brought him considerable praise and critical acclaim, including an Emmy nomination, which is essentially the equivalent of an Academy Award, but for TV work.
If I'm guarding you,
Tough talk, I like that. Give me your gun.
let me get you a 25 caliber.
What's wrong with yours?
It's the 357 Magnum.
I've heard of that. That's a good brand.
Did you know that Mark Harmon has been working in show business since the late 70s? He made his television debut in a lesser-known sitcom called Ozzy's Girl after filling in for an actor on short notice. In the early days, Harmon took several acting classes and worked with mentors to help him hone his craft. It was during these early years that we really see Harmon taking on some of his riskiest roles. Long before he became a key figure on NCIS, Harmon played one of the riskiest and most intriguing characters of his career, infamous serial killer Ted Bundy. While preparing Preparing to play the titular role in the 1986 NBC miniseries titled The Deliberate Stranger, Harmon had been given the opportunity to meet with the sadistic killer face-to-face, but he declined for a valid reason. As it turns out, the director of the miniseries, Marvin Chomsky, advised Harmon not to meet with Bundy. When Harmon first got the script, his very first reaction was to jump the first plane to Florida and try to meet with Bundy, which is something that any great actor would likely want to do. However, the problem was that at the time, Bundy refused to admit his guilt, so all that Harmon would have met with would have been someone who is charming, a person that everyone else, including some of his victims, thought they knew, but not the real Ted Bundy. In order to properly conduct his character research of Bundy in the best possible way, he needed to meet those who knew Bundy personally. It was a frightening rabbit hole that Harmon would never forget. During an interview, Harmon opened up about his character research for Ted, saying, "I spent time with people who knew Bundy pretty well. That people were at times confusing me with the real person, I guess, is kind of a pat on the back." In the end, Harmon received critical praise for his portrayal of one of America's most prolific and sadistic serial killers. One critic in particular, who was taken aback by Harmon's performance, wrote, "Harmon acquits himself admirably, using his piercing eyes to chill as well as charm and to get inside the character's solipsistic amorality." Now, I know some of you are probably wondering what Mark is up to these days in his spare time, and we wouldn't be good at our jobs if we didn't have all the details. So here's what Harmon's been up to during his retirement.
You know, in season 5 or 6, when you went to do publicity and got out of the country, then all of a sudden you realize it was a little more difficult to walk down the street than it was here.
Harmon, who is now 67, loves Pilates. In an interview, Harmon was once asked how he stays in such great shape, and he replied simply, "Pilates. It completely kicks my ass." Good for you, Mark. You're a braver man than me. Last time I did Pilates, I threw my back out. Man, that hurt. Mark also enjoys woodworking, carpentry, and renovations in his spare time. Believe it or not, he once dreamt of being a carpenter. These days, though, Mark is a stay-home kind of guy.
Wow.
She thought it was funny. She had jumped into an alley and thought it was really funny to watch me do that.
Just watching you go through. Can you walk through an airport now?
Sure.
He isn't one to go out every weekend and prefers to hang out at home with his wife of 31 years, Pam Dauber, a former actress.
And so did the pilot. I would go back to New York. I had a little log cabin up in the Catskills where I was. And my agent called and said, "Well, Sister Terry didn't sell." And I was like, thank God.
Harmon's quoted as saying, "It's not even a choice. It's who we are. We stay home a lot. I'm not a Twitter guy or a Facebook guy. Our sons aren't into that either." Harmon's sons are Sean Harmon and Ty Christian Harmon. Both work in the film industry. Sean is an actor. Ty Christian is a screenwriter. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
For some reason that day, she's been there 2 hours longer than her time, and everybody knows it. And it's like a working crew, so everybody's moving. We're in a practical location.
When you're looking for all the details, you can always count on us to deliver the goods.